everyone. In today's video, I thought I would do a Q&A targeted towards high schoolers. I did a Q&A about a year ago and I asked you all to send me questions on Instagram for that one, but I don't have an Instagram anymore, so I thought I would share my answers to a bunch of questions that high schoolers have asked me because I mentor a group of high schoolers as part of my work this summer, and they are all very interested in tech and they had some very great questions for me that I'm sure a lot of other high schoolers have too. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the questions. Before we begin, I just have a few disclaimers. First of all, the information that I'll be presenting is solely based on my own experience, and everyone has different circumstances that will change the way that they deal with things like education and career. Also, everyone is on very different journeys that can't be compared, and every single one of those journeys is completely valid, so just don't compare yourself to others. And finally, you should just do what you want to do and learn what you want to learn, because at the end of the day, it's your life. But if you're looking for a little bit of guidance, I really hope that this helps. The first question is, what made you decide that computer science was your passion and how did you know? So I've always been interested in technology from a very young age, and there was also really nothing else that really piqued my interest in the same way, so I guess in some ways I was lucky because I didn't have to narrow down my options. As I got to high school, I was dead set on going into college as a CS major, and I actually was a CS major for approximately 2 years before switching my major to information science and specializing in UI UX design. There were a ton of different reasons why I didn't want to be a CS major anymore, but overall I just couldn't really see myself doing software engineering or anything like that for the rest of my life, but I could see myself doing something like UI UX design. It took me a long time to come to this realization, but as you take more classes in college and as you get more hands-on experience with coding and other professional situations, you'll realize what works for you and what doesn't, and I don't think it's worth stressing out too much about finding your one true passion in life. I have no clue why that mentality is pushed onto high schoolers, because most people out there don't just have one passion in life, and honestly, you shouldn't have just one passion in life. Instead, people usually just pick one of their interests and make it into their career. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to finding your passion. This question is about AP Computer Science A, and I actually didn't take this class. I wanted to take this class in high school, but whenever I tried to register for it, it never worked with my required classes. Looking back, I think it might have been the universe's way of letting me know that I wouldn't be centering my life around computer science for much longer, but I do know some people who took this class, and so going off of what they have mentioned, I think it's important to get a test prep book, which obviously goes for just about any AP class. Also, use online tutorials for Java to learn the basics of Java syntax before going into the class, and then use College Board's online resources. They're the ones who write the exam, and therefore they're going to have the best and most relevant study materials. And finally, just like any other AP class, it's usually a pretty hard class, so just stick with it and ask lots of questions as they come up. Just in general, people can't really help you if they don't know what you need help with, so be sure to communicate with your teacher and work together with others in your class. This question says, what languages do you know and which ones do you think are the hardest to learn? And I'm assuming this means programming languages, so I have listed them here. In total, I think I know 7, and by know them, I mean I know the general syntax for them, and I know what resources to use to figure out how to do specific things in those languages. The ones that I use the most are C++ and Python, and I'm the most fluent in those. And going forward, I'm mainly going to be using Python in college, which I'm really excited for because Python is probably my favorite programming language. But anyway, I'd say the easiest to learn is HTML and CSS, because that's just kind of layout stuff, and the next easiest would be Python, followed by R, and then JavaScript, and then Visual Basic, and MATLAB, and finally C++. I really hate C++, but it's definitely a very important language to know because it's very dynamic. The good news though is that once you have a good understanding of one programming language, it becomes a lot easier to learn other ones. For this question, I will leave a link in the description to a resource with a bunch of high school tech internships. I think it's important to apply to as many of these internships as you can because they can be very competitive and very rare. Usually, most tech internships want you to have at least 1 year of college level coding experience under your belt, and even then, it's usually only incoming college juniors and incoming college seniors who end up getting these internships. However, it's definitely possible to get a high school internship, especially if you apply to these internships that are specifically geared towards high schoolers. I never applied to internships in high school, and neither did most other people I know. I feel like like we were pretty busy with standardized test prep and with taking classes over the summer, but to each their own. It's definitely not necessary to have an internship in high school, and I would say that you should only do it if you really have the time and if you're really interested in the internship. This question says, how do you become a competitive applicant for college admissions? And this is a bit of a vague question, but I do have 3 main points that I want to bring up. There's obviously a million different factors that go into why certain applicants get chosen over others in the college admissions process, but I just thought I'd talk about these 3 for now. First of all, standardized test prep is very important, but it's not the end all be all, so don't feel like you won't get into college if your scores aren't where you want them to be. Instead of picking an arbitrary goal for your scores, check your college's SAT and ACT ranges if you already know where you want to apply, and just aim for the high end of that. Next, it's important to start writing your college essays very early. I recommend the summer before your senior year because that's when you have all the new essay prompts available to you, and it's also before the craziness of senior year starts. I know junior year is notorious for being difficult, but I think because of that, people let their guard down for senior year, and they can sometimes get overwhelmed with how fast things pick up when the first week of school hits, especially if you're taking a bunch of AP classes or if you have a bunch of extracurricular activities or work or anything like that. I really feel like you should be writing your essays during the summer, and then you can continue to make edits up until the due date. And on that note, be very specific in your college app essays. I've looked over a ton of essays and I've noticed a common trend of people just writing the equivalent of those meaningless motivational speeches that we see all over the internet. It's very easy to fall into that trap, but by planning your essay out before writing, you can avoid this. You should be telling a specific story about yourself with a specific moral for every single prompt, unless otherwise specified. This question is, how can I narrow down the colleges I would like to attend and the careers that I would like to pursue? And I already sort of discussed the career aspect of this, so for that, I would say that you should think about both your interests and what you want your future to look like and see what overlaps and go from there. For colleges, definitely go on college tours if possible. Every college has a different atmosphere and it's important to experience that firsthand if you can. Also see if you can speak to current students, but do be mindful if you do get the chance to do this because most college students are extremely busy people. If you do get the chance to talk to a college student, ask your most important questions and all of the questions that you can't find the answers to on Google. And then again, think about the kind of lifestyle that you want to have for the next 4 years and see which colleges best support that. For instance, I knew that I really wanted to attend a big school rather than a smaller school because I like the idea of not everyone knowing my name, and I like the idea of large lecture halls and things like that. And finally, be realistic about your finances and think about any loans or scholarships that you'll need to apply for or take out. It really sucks to do this because usually it means that you're going to be ruling out a lot of different schools, but it's definitely important to do sooner rather than later. The next question is, how many colleges did you apply to during your senior year and how many did you get accepted to? So I applied to 14 total, which is a lot, and I would not recommend applying to that many. Most people I know apply to around 5, and I think that's perfectly fine. I will list them all on the screen in a second and tell you whether I was accepted or deferred or waitlisted or rejected. If you're applying to this many colleges, there are bound to be rejections, and I remember that it was hard to deal with at the time, but most of these schools were just reach schools for me, and I really like where I ended up, and I can't really see myself having the same sort of future at any of the other schools I applied to, so I don't have any regrets, and I think most people do not regret where they went to college either. This question is about recommendations for laptops that you can draw on, write on, and type on, and I highly recommend getting an iPad with an Apple Pencil and a Bluetooth keyboard case, but an iPad isn't a laptop computer, so you won't be able to use any downloaded software, and if you're going into tech, you're probably going to have a lot of downloaded software to use. I have an iPad Air, an Apple Pencil, and a MacBook Pro, and I absolutely love that combination, but if you just want to have one device that does all of those things, then I highly recommend looking into Windows laptops, but I don't have any recommendations for those because I've never used any. My major is information science, like I said before, and I'm specializing in UI UX design, and I'm currently minoring in computer science as well, but since I came into college with a ton of AP credits, I have some extra room in my schedule, and I will probably be adding another minor in applied statistics. On that note, statistics is literally my favorite math-based subject, and it it definitely goes hand in hand with coding and CS. Some examples of how it's used in CS are counting, number theory, probability, data analytics, and honestly like a million other things. I highly recommend taking AP statistics and continuing to take stats classes in college if that interests you at all. The next question is about the internships I've done. So because of the fact that I decided to switch my major from computer science to information science, I really only had time for one major internship before that change. I interned at PayPal in their blockchain innovation department, and I worked with a team of other undergraduates to work on a blockchain related project. I loved working there, and I got to present my work to some higher ups in the company, and it was a very cool project to work on. This internship was during the school year, and it definitely was difficult to balance at times, so I definitely recommend summer internships over semester internships. But again, it's up to you and what you think you can handle. Next summer, I really want to get a UI UX design internship because now I finally know that that's what I want to do with my life, and I'm just excited to see where I end up next summer. Aside from formal internships, I was also a research assistant for 2 semesters, and I worked with PhD students to help them with their research tasks. This next question is about when I started to learn how to code, and again, I started pretty early because I was always very interested in tech, but everyone starts at different times, and that is totally okay. In middle school, I did Khan Academy tutorials, and I have no idea if they're still up, but they were basically just drawing things with code, which was really fun. Then I took my first programming class in 9th grade, and this was taught in a programming language called Visual Basic, which is a really obsolete coding language that literally no one uses anymore. But I really liked that class, and my teacher for that class told me that I should do a Visual Basic competition, so I tried it out in 10th grade, and I ended up continuing it all throughout high school. Then the majority of my coding education came from college, and it is 100% okay to not have much coding experience until college. What you learn in college is really what you need to know anyway. So in college, I've learned MATLAB, R, C++, and Python. One piece of advice that I would give to someone interested in CS is that you shouldn't compare yourself to anyone else, and you should just learn things at your own pace. You should also completely disregard the competitive aspect of the technology field because it'll take all the enjoyment out of tech. Also, make sure that you're making time for things that you enjoy that have nothing to do with coding, and don't feel like your interest in coding has to be your only personality trait going forward in college and in life. College admissions officers and potential employers want to see that you are a well-rounded person with a ton of different interests, and beyond that, just having a well-balanced life makes you a happier person, and I think in the long run that will serve you better than just solely focusing on coding. So that is it for the Q&A. I really hope that it was helpful in some way. Feel free to drop any more questions that you have in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week.